All right, this is video 2, and in video 2, I am comparing some example slows that I have found along with what we are going to discuss today. Sorry for moving this around, trying to get it right. All right, so what I found online is not exactly like our template for Horry County because, of course, every district, state forms their own template, but I found something fairly close to it. So I'm going to compare what we have discussed so far in the first video with what you see from the example. So here's their slow. Students, this is a social studies slow, by the way, one for civics and government. Students will independently use primary and secondary sources to explain, connect, and/or form an argument based on historical and contemporary issues related to civics and government. That is a big idea. It is very general. Again, it's talking about an argument, it's talking about history, secondary sources, but it didn't say how many sources. It didn't say what type of primary source. It didn't say it had to be interviews or biographies or autobiographies, things like that. So it wasn't that specific, but it leaves you room to grow. And remember, that's what you need to do for this part over here in a learning objective. Okay. What big idea? The big idea, again, like what's the rationale behind it? What's the purpose? So in our section of the rationale, this section called the big idea, meaning demonstrating the understanding of civics and government, including the purpose and function of the government, the establishment of the ideas, etc. That would go in this section. And if you want to pause the video and read that, that helps. I'm also sending the links to you. And also this section here. It's critical for students to be able to read and comprehend primary, secondary sources in social studies in order to learn to be college and career ready. Put in those buzzwords, college and career readiness, that educational jargon. So make sure that you put that in there. That goes into the rationale section here. So remember, if you're looking at the examples, why is learning goal important? And what big idea would help you to answer the rationale part. Okay? And then thinking about standards. That's, of course, is self-explanatory. When you're thinking about your student population. But before we get into student population, I wanted to add, if you scroll down this document, I had to pause it just because I remember there was another part there. You have to scroll down quite a few pages. And there's a section that describes the courses, assessments, and/or experiences used to establish expected outcomes for students. That would also go into our rationale part. So what previous areas did you use? What previous tests did you use to help, bring your SLO, to help create your SLO? That's on page 7 of the document. So based upon a review of the prior students' course grades, based upon portfolios and state tests and the school writing test, I achieved this goal of what the SLO should be. And that's what you will put in the rationale as well. Wanted to add that part here. And again, this person is analyzing the actual data, and they're going into what's considered to be your population. So in our template, what you're reading here, identify the actual performance grades, test scores to establish starting points. That's what you would talk about with your student population. How many students scored this score last year? How many of your students are ESL students? How many of your students have an IEP? Those are all important things to look at. So just like what we would do with the GBE, when you're thinking about what score on the previous things and how that helped me to get to where I am. How are my decisions informed because of that data? So the student population part, this will go here. Okay, so this section of the sheet I'm sending you, and again, this is the website, the name of the PDF I'm sending to you if you see it across the top. Okay. Keep going here. And the next part you'll see is, we go here and kind of pause it for a second. And again, this particular document is a little backwards because their areas are everywhere else. But if you look on page 6 of their document, the section that's called How Will You Use This Information to Monitor Student and Progress and to Differentiate Instruction for All Students Toward This Learning Goal, that is this section here. That's the section you will use for your instructional strategies over here. And of course, it also kind of hints towards your progress monitoring section here. Okay, so if you want kind of assistance with that, this section will help with both of those. So student work, both informal and informal, will be analyzed for ability to demonstrate each of the criteria on the rubric. See that keyword rubric? You have to have a rubric here. If you don't have one, you're not going to be able to have a quality assessment. Including the ability to identify relevant content evidence. Students who are struggling readers and writers will have assistance with reading sources. Variety of learning level sources will be used to engage struggling readers. Variety of graphic organizers will be used. See, again, this is talking about that blended learning concept. My only advice is I would be a little bit more specific, maybe. I would talk about, I'm going to use differentiation benchmarks, assessments, flexible grouping. I will be a little bit more specific than what this particular area is. But again, that is up to you ultimately, but that's just my advice. I feel like that part is lacking. Everything else about this flow is good, but I feel that part needs some more work there. All right. Now the part that I feel we may struggle with the most, I know I would, as I'm thinking about this in particular, is to think about their growth targets. That is definitely a struggle. If you look on page 8 of this document, and again, growth targets and baseline trend data, this section goes there. The targets are based on, I'm reading this section on this side. The targets are based on argumentative writing rubric scores for the teacher created task, as well as 3 formal performance tasks administered in the course over the entire school year. So that was that person's progress monitored. How did they know they were reaching that goal? This is not an average of scores, but rather an evaluation of students demonstrated consistent improvement over time. Criteria of the rubric says since there's no state assessment, this person is thinking about their baseline data. Since I've looked at all this stuff, I looked at their historical data, their grades, their previous portfolio, their pre-test writing scores, all these things. Here's what I came up with from a pre-test, from the history, from everything I've looked at. And you need to have at least 2 or 3 different types of assessments. Here's everything I've looked at. First part, approximately here. 75% of the 21 students in the low performing group at the beginning of the year will move into the average group. You notice that they did not say 100%. We want to be realistic. It's not likely 100% of your students will automatically jump and move. We would love for that to happen, but it's probably not going to happen. So with the slope, be realistic. Don't overshoot. Be realistic. So we'll move into the average group at the end of the year, reaching the proficient level on the majority of the rubric's criteria across both teacher created and formal performance tasks. Keyword rubric. That rubric saves you. This is how this student moved from here to here. You have to be specific. The students remaining in the low performing group, the rest of the 520 of the 21 students will score at the nearing proficiency level. So even though these students did not jump levels, they showed growth. And as long as you can prove that, and that's what you were assumed, then that's great. That's what we want. You want every student leave your class having learned something, which is, of course, they do. Approximately 10% of the 33 students in the average group, remember this is their second tier, will move into the high group. So they don't think a lot of their average group will move to the higher part because they just look at their data, performance, and what their students have done. Reaching the advanced level, the students remaining on the average performing group will score at a proficient level for the majority of the rubric with some demonstration of performance at the advanced level across both teacher created and formal performance tasks. This person is like, I know that they can do some advanced work, but they're not going to be able to reach their full potential. Only a few will. And that's okay. So once again, are they showing growth? Now, the group that we forget about the most is the high flyers. We want them to remain high flyers. So with this, that's what Slo is also touching as well. So if you have 100% of students who are high flyers, then they're going to remain high flyers. And what are you going to do to enrich them? So this person said, 100% of the 6 students started in a high-performing group at the beginning of the year will remain in the high-performing group at the end of the year, reaching the advanced level on the majority of the rubrics criteria across both teacher-created and formal performance tasks. So again, this person is saying that they are going to remain high and they're going to have enrichment throughout this process. So you don't want to forget about the high flyer group, okay? Even though it's easy because you're like, thank you for being a high flyer. You helped me. All right. And this person is reflecting. These targets are ambitious and realistic for a 12th grade year-long study of civics and government. Several of the struggling students, based on the above data, are scoring as near proficiency, differentiating and instruction. These students will be able to also score as proficient. Students who are significantly below proficient should be able to demonstrate growth by at least one level on the rubric. Again, keyword rubric, you keep hearing that. That's important. Okay? And again, it's set for quality because there's a clear rubric there. And this is the reflection at the end, but we will get to that. This is the post reflection. Here's what actually happened, and that's what I wanted, and this is what actually happened. Okay? So that will come later. So video 2 is showing you how an example of what you need to do matching up with the rubric that we just explained. In the final video, you will be able to see what other examples you have that can help you get ready for SLO.